Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader. I'm excited for the guest we've got here today. Somebody that I go back over, we must be pushing up on a decade, at least over half a decade, since we started doing some work together when he was with Verdesian, now the general manager of North America for Groundwork BioAg, Mr. Andrew Duff. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Good to be here. It's an honor to be on the program. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. Excited to hear a little bit more about what you're doing at Groundwork, and also to get your take on intentional leadership and what you're doing around all these things. So let's open it up, man. What's it mean for you to be intentional?
Yeah, for me, being intentional is all about having a purpose. I think for anything to be worthwhile, you have to understand what your purpose is. That allows you to be authentic. It allows you to harness your passion. So really understanding what's your story, why am I doing what I'm doing? All of those things impact whether you're intentional or not.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more, man. I think we're starting to hone in on a common definition. Before I'm done with this podcast, we're going to have one definition for the whole industry about what intentional leadership is. But it's really is focusing on this whole having a purpose, knowing what you're about, having your own personal North Star, as Colin Steen put it on his episode. So I like that. Good stuff, man. Talk to us a little bit about you, your background, where you live, and what's Groundwork BioAg up to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I grew up on a family farm in the Mississippi Delta. So I say that I've been in the ag industry my whole life. Got a beautiful wife of 20 years plus, two kids, Brady and Reagan, 16 and 13. I live in North Mississippi, just outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And, I've been at Groundwork for a little over a year now. And it's been an incredible journey. And I think I'm very fortunate that this door opened for me at a time when this whole biological and carbon space was really exploding. And so, to have a position in a company where you're creating something new, and educating people and helping define things and create processes, it's a really fun place to be. So I couldn't be more excited. Working with the team in Israel, our company is headquartered in Israel, which has been a fantastic experience for me culturally. Um, and what we're doing here in North America has been fantastic. We've got a great team that we're building, and we've had a lot of interest from farmers to get on board and to help us figure this out. Knowing that we don't have every answer, but we will be transparent and we'll figure it out together.
Yeah. Wow. Well, but it is really an exciting time. You and I were talking a little bit here off the mic this morning, just about the some of the advances, what's exciting about it, around it, how much how much there is a lot of competition, obviously, but that's all required, right, for the innovation that's required for this to be a sustainable contributor to the long-term viability of the industry. So appreciate what you're doing, appreciate the work that you're doing. And I know you guys are growing. So, talk to us a little bit about, what you're doing to try to attract the right kind of talent with a growing type of business and the right kind of people to help you capture market share and to support your operations and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, talent obviously is a huge part of the success of any company. And right now, it's a really interesting dynamic going on in agriculture. You have this innovation transition, I call it.
Mm.
Seed, chemical, and fertilizer are the primary inputs that farmers use, and now you have this fourth shelf of biologicals that is increasing. So nature-based solutions, and you've had a ton of investment from venture capital and others around biological companies. So we're having a lot of new tools that are coming to the farm. But you also have to sort through what works. And interesting enough, at the same time, we have commodity prices that are falling. And so you have this net farm income that is negative today. So every company has to really understand, what is my value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about our industry is, it corrects itself. And so when times are really good and commodity prices are high or farm income is high, um, you know, you can have a lot of companies flourish. But when things are tough, that's when you really sort out the products and the companies that have something valuable versus those that don't. The venture capital world is in a drought right now. They're a bit paralyzed of, where do I invest my money? A lot of companies started when farm income was profitable and built big organizations. But when times are lean, what do you fall back on? Ultimately, it has to be something that provides value to the farm,
Mm-hmm.
either in the form of additional income or
Right.
cost savings of some sort. And so, for us, I want to retain, I want to attract talent that really understands the dynamics on the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and how to first look through that filter and put yourself in the shoes of the grower. Ultimately, that is the customer. That is who has to see value in your product. Now, we have channel partners that are critical, that we can't do this without. But they are our partners, and together we're all trying to solve a problem for the farmer, either by making them more money, or saving them money, or being more efficient. So, that's a key part of my strategy with hiring talent here in North America, is that understanding of farm dynamics, and the decisions that growers have to make every day,
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the responsibility and autonomy to make decisions. We create an atmosphere of trust where we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to learn from them, and hopefully we don't repeat them, and
Mm-hmm.
we get moving in the right direction as soon as possible.
You bet. Yeah. So a couple of questions that come up from that, which excellent answer, by the way. And I think maybe one of the most detailed and probably most intentional answers to that question since I started the show. So so thank you for that. And I want to dive into one thing. I know a lot of people struggle with this because at the end of the day, everybody's trying to get their product noticed by the consumer, by the end user, right? Or get somebody to pay them to use their thing. So when it comes to developing your team, how do you walk that tightrope, that fine line between walking in the, or understanding what it's like to walk in the shoes of the farmer, of the customer, and then also getting them to assume a little bit of risk and try something new?
Hmm. Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah, right.
And there's not a standard answer.
Right.
And so, the good thing is, that's job security for those that know how to ask questions and help figure it out.
Yep.
But I look for people that have had meaningful experiences in multiple different
Mm-hmm.
aspects of agriculture, whether it's growing up on the farm or you grew up in the city.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that perspective as well. We need them all. And that diversity is key. I really, having grown up in the Mississippi Delta, with lots of dynamics culturally, we morphed to a monoculture of cropping and society, which ultimately creates issues, and it's not as productive as the way you know our creator intended this world. And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
it's good to have the diversity, and make people comfortable, create an environment where they can share their ideas. Because I learn every day from counterparts in Israel who don't come from a farming background, that are
Mm-hmm.
approaching this problem in a way that I never would have thought of.
Interesting.
Somebody from an analytics or data management background.
Mm-hmm.
Farming is just another manufacturing process How do
Right.
I automate things? How do I reduce the manual error and improve, kind of passive data collection?
Mm.
Diversity, I guess, at the end of the day is a critical piece of the equation.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. Yeah. It's super, super interesting. To come back to the question, like how do you walk that fine line between positioning a product, new product, whatever, and then understanding that okay, commodity prices are lower, interest rates are higher, cash is tighter, right? This is the perfect storm for everybody to kind of curl up in a ball and wait for things to improve, right?
Yeah. Well,
And
I think, for us, it's being transparent.
yeah,
If you have again a value proposition that risk versus reward.
yeah,
If the risk is low, then the reward doesn't have to be all that significant. If the reward is huge, then I can take more risk. But
mm,
you have to just be transparent with farmers, and it's okay to explain that I don't have all the answers,
yeah,
but I can commit to you that within this time frame, I'm going to share with you everything that I learned. And we will make decisions that we may not both agree on all the time, but you will understand where I'm coming from.
hmm,
I being our company,
yeah,
or whoever it is.
yeah, yeah,
Look back on the launch of biotech traits, which I was very fortunate to be on the ground level of that in 1995 and 96. I was a college intern, and you're meeting with farmers who are now being charged in a totally different way for inputs.
sure,
Um, not everything was done correct, but over time things have evolved, and you learn from mistakes, you get input. But
you bet,
bottom line is the transparency piece for me.
absolutely. Good stuff, man. It's such an interesting discussion. And you said one thing which I believe to be true for the most part, and that's that there's no one way to get somebody to make that decision.
Yeah.
But there is a common theme, I think, amongst, and you probably fit into this because I know you've had an existing network of relationships with farmers with a lot of trust where you can go in there and say, hey, I'm doing a new thing. Will you take a look at it? Right? Will you give it can we give it a try? And that's where my advice to so many, especially when we're working with young sellers and doing any training that way, but really with everybody, because you can start at any age, is build your network before you need it,
Hmm.
right?
Oh,
Build,
not
like
100%. I mean,
build it
that
now.
over 28 years, I've met a lot of people. In the ag industry is a small, very tight knit industry, and it's wonderful. I grew up watching my dad, who had a career in the ag business and also farm, and I just loved it. It's just my people and what I enjoy. And so you get to meet so many people, but those people stay around and change jobs and go try to figure out a new solution to a problem. But we're all, kind of in the same industry, and you never know when the person that you were a college intern with 28 years ago
Yeah.
might be the next person that you need to, do business with. And so, it's just, to me, that's what I enjoy the most about this industry, about my career, has been really the network, whether it's farmers or executives that you encounter, whether it's one time or 100 times. You can relate back to that experience and say, hey, here I am now, and let's work together. you know
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think we're moving into a season of getting to do a lot more sales manager development so that we can work through them to help salespeople. There's only so many of us to go around at the Thrive Today team, right? And so there's a lot more leverage there. And one of the things I'm coaching these sales managers to do is to create some metrics for their salespeople about getting engaged in their communities, right?
Mhm.
Like what are they doing? Like where do their farmer customers hang out? What are they engaged with? Are they involved with FFA or the county fair or the farm bureau organizations? Those are great places to start, especially for young people. And then what else, right? Where do they hang out and have coffee? What can you do to get engaged? Obviously, there's the stopping out and get to know people, the ground, like the grunt force sales work that has to happen, right? But man, if you build a relationship with this guy or gal before you go to ask them for money, and you've known them for a year, 2 years, 10 years. That's why people like to have people that, are from that area. If they have some level of trust and a good personal brand on a local level, then, they have a much higher likelihood of getting somebody to adopt a new behavior or try something new because they have that relationship in place. So anyway, that's one of the things that we're working on to help people develop that talent and retain that talent. Because if the metrics that are getting measured are about something other than financial production, now we've given that employee more ways to win,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, that's such a critical thing to focus in on, especially today when there's so much social media, and you can assume that social media means networking. It doesn't.
No,
Social
not
media is a
necessarily.
tool. I mean, it's a tool that can help you find people, but actual networking is more than just interacting comments over the internet.
Yep.
And for anyone young in their career, that network is your value. Because when you move to the next level and you take on more responsibility, companies are looking to hire people and put them in those roles that have a network. If you don't have a network, nobody can do anything by themselves. At the end of the day, that's
That's
the
right.
bottom line. Is I can't. I don't care how smart you are, how talented you are. You can't do it all by yourself. And so you have to have a network. And that's why these non-compete clauses in contracts are, uh,
Right.
they're an interesting thing to digest. But that network is so important, and you have to invest in it now. And the fact that you guys are making that part of the program, I think, is a
Mhm.
critical, very subtle but very critical piece of someone's success over their career.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, man, I mean, I think, you've been through our programs and we talk about leading versus lagging indicators, and our leading indicators are clarity, certainty, and capacity that we teach every time. Doesn't matter what the program is. That's foundational for our client to understand the difference between a leading and a lagging. A lagging result being, did we sell it? Did we not sell it? Did we get the acres? Did we not get the acres? The leading is like, what are you doing to invest in your network so that who to go talk to, right? So there's clarity and then certainty that comes with that, obviously. So there's a lot that goes into that. But what are you doing to nurture the network? To me, that's a great leading indicator that's showing me, not, we can have a good sales result today or a negative sales result today, doesn't matter. Those leading indicators are much more telltale for where it's going to be in the next cycle,
Yeah.
right? Because that stuff has to happen year round. It can't just be when you want to go get a prepay check.
Yeah. Yeah. I have learned that the hard way in some cases where, someone that I have known for a while, haven't talked to for a while, and you call them and you need something, and you don't get a real welcome reaction sometimes. And I think
Mm-hmm.
to myself, why is that? And, I appear very self serving at that point.
Yep. Yep.
And so, you need to take steps to, I mean, if you genuinely care about relationships with people, then that's obvious. You
Mm-hmm.
can't fake that.
Yep. Now, to come back to your point on social media, if you're leveraging that, like we're leveraging the ability to put a podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I know those are bullhorns. They're not social media platforms, but then we promote that through LinkedIn and our Facebook group and things like that. And so people hear about it. So what happens then? Now we're leveraging social media to pour value into the network. Because, Andrew, you and I, we know a lot of people. There's no way that you can possibly text, email, snail mail, smoke signal, all of your connections in your network to keep the relationship fresh, right?
Right.
So, but because of technology, you do have leverage in a way to keep putting value in. Our theory, I say this a lot on the show, is if we keep putting more value into the industry than we ask of it, we'll never go hungry,
Yeah. Good.
right?
Good
So just
philosophy.
keep putting value in. Let's pivot a little bit, talk about culture. You're more at that startup phase, small team. You have that the golden opportunity to curate the culture that you want from the get go. What are you doing to be intentional about that?
Yeah, no, I love this topic. And in my career, I started out working for Monsanto, the largest ag company in the world at the time, doing lots of great innovative things. And every change that I've made has been to smaller and smaller companies earlier in the startup phase, and I enjoy that exponentially. And so, being here at Groundwork has been fantastic, and it's a really a unique situation. And you talk about culture. We have an example of the power of culture in front of us with Israel. Over the past year, they've been in the public spotlight regarding the attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I use that as an example. So what's key about their culture? They're one of the happiest nations in the world, and they're fighting for their lives every day. So, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it really comes back to, an identity and a, clear cultural uh,
Right.
identity around the Jewish faith and beliefs. And so,
Hmm.
as I think about our culture at the company, and more specifically in North America, I want us to have a clear identity of what we're trying to accomplish in the workspace, around
Yep.
agriculture. If we don't have, a meaning, then it's going to be harder to be intentional with the culture. And practically speaking, for me, the key elements that I want to build in a team center around trust and respect. Um, you
Mm.
know, not to get overly complicated with your approach to culture. Those are paramount. And I look back at the teams that I've been on that have been wildly successful, and it wasn't a group of uber intelligent people or above average IQ. It was just there was a
Right.
high level of trust and respect,
Yeah.
and you get a lot accomplished as a team versus individually. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's key with our culture. And again, using the example that I see every day that I'm
Yeah.
so impressed with, the resilience of Israel as a nation. It's something to recognize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's super interesting parallel, and sort of an analogy. I mean, having now read the entire Old Testament now cover to cover, uh, I mean, you have the whole history,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Up to a couple thousand years ago. And then, you can kind of study in more recent history what's happened since then because it's much more well documented. But,
yeah.
it's, yeah, super interesting what goes into forming a culture. One thing that always impressed me about that culture, if I could adopt one thing from, what Israel does to what we could do in the United States, is everybody having to put in 2 years of military service,
Oh yeah.
right? And not,
Mhm.
maybe it's not military, maybe it's just service right to the country, and there's other many ways for people to serve. But you look at that same concept in the Mormon church. I'm not Mormon, but I was impressed with the level of just the diehard culture, how committed people are. In part, I believe, because they spend that 2 years of time at an early age,
Mhm.
right? And everybody goes through a common process.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think there's something for companies to steal there.
Yeah, well, and the the way that they take care of their families, the way that they there's a humility, there's a respect for one another that is just family focus
Mm-hmm.
is so powerful. They take care of each, and
Mm-hmm.
on teams and cultures and business and companies, that is what we should be aspiring to, is taking care of each other, and
Yeah,
we'll be more productive at the end of the day.
I
But
like.
knowing, that service element, I think you hit on it, is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you serve and put others first, that's a game changer,
Yep.
and their culture, requires that. It's
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful stuff. I'm reading a book right now. I'm just about done with it. And I'm going to reread it. I've actually ordered and sent a copy to every member of my team because this is going to be required reading inside the Thrive Today kingdom. And It's by Will Guidara. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it's his story about the leadership that went into creating one of the top 50 restaurants in the world. And we'll see. I haven't finished the entirety of the book yet, but I've been very, very impressed with how he rolls out. And uh, 11 Madison Park in New York City was the restaurant that he took over when he was in his 20s. Okay. And so this is his story of how he turned this from a 2-star to a 4-star.
Mhm.
So, but the one thing that's interesting, and to go back to that common experience, is it doesn't matter if you came into that restaurant with 20 years of or 30 years of restaurant experience. Everybody starts in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Everybody starts with the same job, and it might be 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, right, to work your way out of that job until maybe something else opens up or whatever the case may be. But everybody has to start there. And I think there's some gold in there for those that are listening to think about your onboarding processes. How do you, especially if your organization's been around for a hot minute, it's really hard to change culture. It's like you got to go think about turning the rudder on a great big freighter full of corn and soybeans crossing the Pacific Ocean, right? You move it 1 degree, and over time, that's the difference between Tokyo and Beijing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it's that 1 degree makes a big difference over time, but you got to be patient with it. So what are some of those little levers you can pull? And I thought that was a really impressive one. And I'm seeing that, in the example you brought up, Andrew, and some of the stuff we're having our employees do at Thrive Today, and so on and so forth. And backed up by this book, which has become a bestseller from a thought leadership kind of standpoint. So giving people that common experience is really, really intentional.
Yeah. Well, that example of the working in the kitchen, and for leaders that are able to have walked a mile in the shoes of the people that they lead,
Mm,
that is so powerful. Not in all cases can that be done. But if you look at a lot of the companies that have been successful, and where did their CEOs come from? None of them started out at the executive level. So, they
mhm.
worked their way up. And how did they work their way up? Well, they did a good job at the job that they were given.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of leaders who are, the ones that are focused on the title, I think, are the ones that struggle. The ones who look at it as a service opportunity are
Yeah.
the ones that are successful.
Yeah.
And so, that's a big difference, in companies, reaching their goals or not.
That.
Yeah, I'm always thinking of ways that I can work myself out of a job.
Yeah.
Let's accomplish the goal. I'm not worried about job security or whether I've got a job after we've accomplished the goal. Odds are you never completely accomplish it because you're continuously improving.
Right.
But I like to think in those terms of let's get the job done the right way as quick as possible, and there'll be another opportunity to tackle once
Mhm.
that's been achieved.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I like the 80/20 rule when it comes down to this. It's another great book for sure for business leaders. Is 10x is easier than 2x, and it's about the idea that to 10x a business or a book of business for that matter is actually easier than just doubling it, because to
Yeah.
double it just means you grind harder.
Hmm.
10x means it would require the help of others, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so getting the right others around you, getting the right who's to support your mission. But at the end of the day, it'll take your business or my business. That's at the end of the day, there's about 20% of the work that you and I do that generally is generating about 80% of the results.
Yeah.
But most of the stress comes from the other 80%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And most of the things that are maybe preventing you from having even more success or coming out of those. So when that 20% equals a certain lever, a certain marker, a certain point, and so if my 20%, let's say, needs to equal $1 million, right? And that amount of time that I'm putting in generates 1 million or 10 million or 100 million or whatever the right metric is for you in your business. When you do those things, that allows the business to hit that mark. Okay. All the other 80% of the stuff that is maybe slowing you down or is not super aligned with your specific gifts that are allowing you to do a great job, those need to go to someone else. So you create that new position and then you train them to do the same thing.
Right.
And then it's 80-20 all over again.
Right.
And so that's really given me, I've taken a lot of time to reflect. Okay, what are the things that Mark Jewell does really well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what are those worth to the business? How can I spend more of my time focused on those things and less time? All the other stuff's got to get done. Don't get me wrong. But who can I bring around me to support and in what capacity? So anyway, all good culture building conversation. Before we run out of time, I want to pull some of this other good stuff out of you, Andrew. So what's the biggest hurdle, man, that you've had to overcome as a leader?
For me, personally, the biggest hurdle was battling anxiety.
Mm,
Um, in the leadership world, there's this focus on performance and other things, and so we're 3D human beings. We're mind, body, and soul. To your point about earlier reading the Old Testament, my faith is critical to who I am as a person, and throughout my career, whether it's managing, leading, whatever, I have to remember my identity and
mhm,
stay grounded in that.
mm,
Um, when I left the big comfort Monsanto culture and started working in more of a private equity, venture capital owned companies, that environment is hyper focused on performance.
mhm,
And you really have, a lot of these metrics that are laid out that, are achieving goals and financial numbers. And that's great. I mean, that's what the shareholders require. But you
right.
get to be very intentional about the mental health and your
Mhm,
other aspect of who you are as a person, and everything usually has a trade-off. If I'm more focused on performance, less on kind of my overall health as a human being or my family life or whatever it is.
yep.
And so it was the hardest thing I ever went through in my life. With a bout of some severe anxiety. I didn't know what that was about.
Wow.
It's the greatest blessing that ever happened to me as well, because it really exposed me or caused me to dig deeper into my network of Christ followers for me. That is
Mhm,
who I am, and that network helped me. And then putting things in perspective. We're here for a reason. We all have a purpose outside of our companies, and for people that are under my care, under my responsibility, now I need to be mindful of them, and I want to help them have the right perspective, even though we're hyper focused on performance. And
mhm,
we got, type A personalities that are killing it. I mean, absolutely, you know, driving themselves to the brink of falling off the cliff.
yeah.
So, you got to rein it back in and remember who we are as human beings as well.
Hmm. Beautiful, man. Well, that's a great testimony and a great testament, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think a lot of people probably deal with that, don't bring it up, or think, well, what would other people think? Those kind of things. A lot of, especially men, we bury this stuff, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
we've got to have a tough facade, and
yep,
as leaders, you have to keep your troops calm.
yep,
But there's a time for just self-reflection and some vulnerability, that in the right setting is helping other people get through their problem. It may not be the best thing for me to share as a leader, but
well,
maybe it helps somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we may not have time to get to it today, and the running short on time here. But when the last question becomes how important is vulnerability in creating an intentional work environment, right? And I mean, if people know who you truly are, and that I mean, they're more likely to follow you. They'll follow you into anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
good.
yeah, for sure. You've got to have a sense of humility, and as human beings, we have pride and ambition and all these things, which in and of themselves, can be okay. It's okay to want to be very successful in your job and to have a great career. There's nothing in and of itself wrong with that. But it's just the priority of that.
Right.
Where do you put that?
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's the biggest hurdle, what's been the biggest win?
Well, we talked about earlier the network. I mean, for me in my career,
Yeah.
there are lots of things that I've been a part of as a team, whether it's launching a new seed brand at Pinnacle or being part of that team that transitioned a huge family-owned retail distribution business into what's now part of Simplot. Those were some challenging times, and learned a lot through that. Happy with that experience, but overall, I think it's just building a network. That would be my biggest win as a leader, is just
Beautiful.
having people that that I trust, that trust me, that we can work together and go through life together.
Yeah. I love it, man. Well, it's obviously serving you well. You've got a great family, great career. I mean, at the end, there's a lot of evidence stacking up to say, hey, this guy's got a good network. He takes care of it, keeps priorities the priorities. So, who's been somebody that you've really admired over the course of your life or career?
Oh man, as we talk about the network and so many people, um, I have I've really admired looking back in that era when biotech traits were launched in the late '90s to mid 2000s. That management team, kind of the middle management team at Monsanto, Dave Rylander, Barry Knight, John Raines, Osborne, McVeigh. I'm going to forget somebody,
Mhm.
and they'll be upset with me. But there were so many conflicts to manage through because you're doing something new,
Yeah.
and the way that that team approached it, and it really was kind of a culture at the company then that started with Rob Fraley and the executive team is go talk to the customer, go sit down and be transparent. Understand what their issues and concerns are, and then help them understand the challenges you face in running a business.
Hmm.
Because all of the innovation when you're running a company, it's another set of problems that maybe your customer doesn't always understand clearly.
Yeah.
And I think that group, I would say, is what comes to mind for me.
Yeah. It's cool to have you share that group, right? And all of us that were around maybe weren't didn't have a front row seat like you did, but you knew about it, right? So it's interesting to hear
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the
Not
industry.
everything was roses all the time.
Yeah, right. And we know the end result now, 30 years later, but we didn't necessarily, get to have that front row seat. So that's cool to hear. What let's talk about you a little bit from just the personal perspective. What do you do to keep your energy up? What do you do to stay productive? What works for you?
Yeah. Oh man. For me, I really like to get out into the field. I get my energy from being on the turn road. And it's harder to do, I guess, the more responsibility you have. But
Hmm.
I try to be intentional and carve out some time to really, again, as you're leading a team of people and working with folks, you got to put yourself in their shoes and stay current with the conversation at a customer level, the grower
Yeah.
level. I think a lot of challenges with companies today is the gap between the boardroom and the turn row. And so, I like filling that role. To me,
Hmm.
that is my comfort zone. I love to, engage with the leadership team, but also carry on conversations at the turn row with
Yep.
my friends that are farming.
Hmm.
As far as productivity, you know, I think there's things to guard against. I don't have a list of, hey, here's my 1, 2, 3, how to be productive for the day.
Right.
But email and conference calls can dominate our day.
Yeah.
I find myself, answering emails and getting exhausted. And
Hmm.
I realize that in most cases I'm trying to help someone else do their job. And that's great. I want to be a team player, but I have to remember what's my role. What did the company hire me to do? Am I the quarterback on the football team, or am I the defensive back or the lineman?
Right.
And I need to be working out to exercise, those strengths and those
Mhm.
that skill set.
Yeah.
So, don't let email and conference calls, if you've been on that all day, number one, you'll be exhausted.
Yep.
Number two, you probably didn't get to the real work that your role was designed for.
Right. I had a long flight coming back from Salt Lake City yesterday, and it was just we had free Wi-Fi on the plane, so I was hammering emails and just taking care of stuff and getting caught up. I'd been away from my daughter's volleyball tournament all weekend, and did Google. So we use Google Workspace for all of our stuff. So Google Docs, Google Sheets, etc. Google rolled out their AI across all their platforms, across all their workspace tools. Okay, so now
Mhm.
whatever. So I'll do the 14-day free trial. We'll see what it is, right? um, and so we had a template that I had to create for so that my team could make LinkedIn posts and emails to go out with these podcast episodes. Okay, and I wanted it to look a specific way. So I took an example that one of our other team members had already created, and I put it into the doc, and then it says, "Hey, do you want to have Gemini take a crack at this?" And so I was like, "Sure, what the heck?" And dude, like what would have taken me half an hour was done in 30 seconds. I maybe tweak a couple things, but it was exactly what I wanted. Not that that happens every single time, but then I was like, well, what can Google Sheets do? So I'm like, well, make me a cash flow projection, including columns for projected in revenue, actual expenses, projected expenses, and it it didn't put the numbers in for me, but it made the template, in a matter of like 20 or 30 seconds. And so it was my hope is some of these tools that are coming in, and I've been cautiously approaching this AI. We actually, Christine and I went through a Christian business leaders boot camp about how to use AI from a kingdom perspective. Because I think that's the big thing that concerns a lot of us, right? Is that we're selling out, right, when we use those kind of tools. But it was pretty cool. My hope, I bring that up in response to your answer to that question about productivity, is that my hope is that some of these things truly make us more productive. So not just to get more done, but to make our lives easier. And then, my advice to others would be, don't fill that extra. I didn't fill that extra half hour with more stuff, right? And I mean, there was a couple things that got to get done, but that allowed me a little bit of time to be a little bit more present with my daughter, who was sitting next to me on the plane.
Mm. That's the key.
Right.
Our tendency is going to be to fill the plate with more stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can
Yep.
be more efficient. We're victims of our own success.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. Yep.
but yeah, that is, for me, the coming season. I always want to be more present for my family, and it's something that I struggle with because I enjoy what I do, and I don't have
Right.
bad intentions, but it certainly competes in a way that I would rather it not.
You bet. All right, man. One last question before we go. Books or podcasts that you recommend that we need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, when you're talking about the restaurant book, I've watched that documentary, but for
Mm,
me, Colin Powell's book, "It Worked for Me" in
mm,
life and leadership is one that I read probably, I don't know, 15 years ago, and it's shaped me in a lot of ways. I relate to him. He uh, served at the highest level of public service, uh,
mm-hmm,
military training and discipline, immigrant family. Grew up in the Bronx.
mm-hmm.
And so his approach to leadership is, it's not flashy or flamboyant. You don't see him setting a stage for himself to talk about his accolades, but
Yeah.
when people ask him, it's pretty common stuff that is, what I relate to.
Love
It's
it.
treating people, the way you would want to be treated, and doing a good job, and worrying, about today, and let tomorrow take care of itself, from a career standpoint. My dad's an old infantry officer, and he always said, "Take care of your troops," and that's really what Colin Powell's book is about. So I'd really encourage people to take a look at that, and it's got some great history about Ronald Reagan and
Mm.
Bush and others who were probably the last era of political leadership that we can all agree was something we'd like to duplicate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no matter where you're from or which side of the
Yeah,
conversation you're on, we'd like to have some sanity back in the in our
absolutely.
leadership. So yeah, Andrew, thanks for doing this, man. A lot of great content in here. Guys, thanks for listening. Andrew, thanks for being here. Great episode today.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Keep it up, man.
You bet.